everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at the Swapper. This is a game that I believe I originally became aware of this through the PAX 10, which it was a part of in PAX East or PAX Prime 2012. I can't exactly remember which one. But since then, it's been on my radar because, you know, as much as I disparage bad puzzle platformers, I am a huge fan of the puzzle platformer genre in general. I'm also a huge fan of Metroidvanias, and that's exactly what this is. This is a Metroidvania puzzle platformer with some mechanics, and they're gonna hate that I'm saying this, but it's got some mechanics that are kind of similar to Portal or Gateways, to use perhaps a more indie-friendly example, or sample, I guess I could say. But with a sci-fi premise, this game hits a lot of buttons that I am totally up for, especially that Metroidvania sci-fi. It's almost got like a Super Metroid or Aliens vibe to it in certain times. And the puzzle platforming is great as well. Now, I've spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours with this game so far, but Facepalm Games, the developers, have humbly requested that I only show off like the first 20 to 30 minutes of gameplay, which I will do. I would be remiss if I spoiled the story for anybody. So rather than continue, I will just hit begin here. Sadly, this is going to erase my existing progress, and that hurts a little bit, but so be it, really. So we're going to get kind of an introduction to our opening cutscene here. This game is very much a game that takes pride in setting mood, if that makes sense. And to a certain extent, me blathering on over top of it is going to destroy that to a certain extent, but this is a game which plays with the graphics and the aesthetic and the tone to kind of put you in a certain mindset. And the mindset I think it wants you to go for is almost like a little scared, curious for sure, and contemplative as well. So this is just kind of setting the tone for what's going on here. That was obviously just like a kind of preliminary, a bumper at the start, if you want. We're going to get kind of a feel for how the game actually looks in just a second when you see the graphics that we've got going on here. So it almost has kind of like a Loom style aesthetic. If you remember, like one of the first games I did a Let's Look at it was Loom, where all of the environments were handcrafted. I mean, in that game they were actually made out of paper, but this game has kind of a similar aesthetic to it, where all of the environments, all of the backgrounds, all of the objects kind of have the feel of an object that you would find in real life, almost to the point where I feel like they might have just found objects and like pieced those together to create the environments. But again, I don't know the actual design and development process of the game. I just know the experience that I get from playing it. Things look like the textures look really, really realistic is maybe a good way to put it, as you can probably see as we touch down here. Should point out I am playing technically a beta build. This doesn't come out for another week or 6 days or so on Steam, so it's possible that things will change drastically, maybe, probably not, but change a little bit, shall we say, from the build that I'm looking at versus the build that you actually you know, end up seeing on Steam. So one thing I want to point out here, I mean, it is a traditional puzzle platformer here. I'm playing with keyboard and mouse. I'm not sure if it actually has 360 controller support, because the mouse is actually like really important in this game, so, you know, I would rather use that as opposed to the right analog stick to aim our cursor here. Lighting effects, really dynamic, looks really good. And again, I want to point out these textures look so awesome considering you know, that this is an indie game, and it's not to say that indie games can't look good, but you know, normally they have a certain style that this is definitely unique from, shall I say. This is not like a standard pixel art or, you know, 16-bit aping game, not that I have any problem with those. But yeah, it looks totally unique, and it looks totally good, and the way that this game plays with lighting is absolutely fantastic. You know, it almost reminds me a little bit, from a texture standpoint, of PID, but I actually think it looks better than PID. Also, you know, the environment's really fully realized, good lighting here as well, really fully realized with respect to their style, if you will. I'm not sure how to put it, but yeah, we're going to definitely get the feel that we are in like an abandoned space station. Right now we're actually on an excavation site, but pretty soon we will get to the space station. So the game doesn't really have an explicit tutorial section, but we are slowly going to be introduced, or actually fairly rapidly introduced, my mistake there, to the main mechanic of the game, which is going to be this swapper gun that we get. So what this does, at least at our level, first things first, is it allows us to create kind of a clone of ourselves, and we can use this clone to accomplish various objectives. For now, it's not really that useful, but as soon as we exit this room and come out here, it will be. So we can use these clones to do standard physics-based puzzle platformer stuff, like hit switches for us, but there will be some more complex objectives that we'll hopefully see a little bit later on in this video. So I think what we want to do here is maybe do this. Actually, it's kind of a good thing that, you know, I'm doing this video. Can you get it? Yes, we managed to get him through there before he got crushed by the switch. It's kind of a good thing I'm doing this video in the first 20 to 30 minutes of the game, considering that, you know, otherwise I have kind of a history of puzzle platformers of not being all that good. So having actually done the puzzles myself once should help us out a lot here. So these beams of light actually kill all our clones, which is important because normally you only get 4 clones, for example. We can also kill them just by walking into them, or by walking them into the light, as you can see. So, you know, you have to manage your inventory in kind of a non-traditional sense. But the other thing is, in a lot of puzzle platformers that I play, I kind of disparage the story a little bit, and I say, like, oh, you know, it's got a story, but it's not that important. This is very much not the case with the Swapper. I haven't actually, you know, tumbled all the way down the rabbit hole so far. I don't know how long the game is. The story moves pretty quick, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was, you know, a 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 hour game. But you're going to come across these security terminals, and the story's told one of two ways. These are one of them, so you can kind of get, like, primary accounts of what's happening. So, for example, listen, we're grateful, but to be frank, half my team refused to be in the same room as one of those swapper devices. I hardly envisage their use becoming widespread enough to justify the security precautions you've had installed down here. So, you know, it's giving you some information, but also raising questions every time you go through one of these, which piques your curiosity. The other way that the story is told, as I get out of this terminal here, is via these, yeah, well, you're just getting one right here, these audio instances that just happen. And those will become more widespread as you're getting further and further along. I'll probably talk over those, unfortunately, which is why I put subtitles on here. And why don't we take our elevator downwards? And again, it's got the same kind of feel for these audio snippets that we're going to encounter, almost in like a Bioshocky way, in that they create more questions than they actually answer. Now, for all of the heavy praise that I've leaped upon the game so far, or lumped upon the game so far, this is very much, in structure, a puzzle platformer, which means there are going to be a lot of sections where, okay, now we can swap to it, which is the, you know, the namesake of the game. So now we can create clones, and using the left mouse button, we can become those clones, which is the most important puzzle mechanic that we're going to have next to just creating those clones in the first place. But we'll die if we go down there, so instead let's go across here. This is not like a monumental change between this type of puzzle platforming and a traditional puzzle platformer, because there's still going to be a lot of sections where we like encounter a gate and it's like you need 5 more orbs to get past this gate, and then there's kind of like 5 standalone puzzle rooms surrounding that. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing even. By the way, blue lights block clones, red lights will block our swap array, so we wouldn't actually be able to. The reason I had to hit the switch first is so that we could get this blue light out of the way and actually create our clone. But red light is going to be annoying as well, which we're going to encounter right away, as you might expect. So we should be able to maybe send our clone up here and have him stand on the switch, like so. And then we should be able to create a clone and swap to him like that. The game strikes a good balance between like conceptual difficulty, like, oh, how do I solve this puzzle, and actual execution difficulty, as in, can I do this like with my hands? It might take a little bit of practice. Most of the time, it is conceptual difficulty, but the puzzles have not been super difficult so far. They've been kind of intuitive. It takes a while before you start thinking in kind of swaps, but once you do, it's not difficult, but it's also not mind-numbingly easy in the same way that something like Bad Bots maybe was, to use a weird example. Anyway, I'm probably going to skip over a lot of these kind of primary dialogues that we're going to have, but it is important to note that the story, as I've experienced it so far, has been really intriguing. Involves some kind of sentient mineral, and you know, my favorite like sci-fi trope where like a space station's going wrong, people are dying, and nobody knows why yet. So it's got a lot of that vibe going on with it that you might see from a movie like Sunshine, or a movie 2001: A Space Odyssey was probably the progenitor there. This console should just open the switch for us, and we'll be able to move onwards. What I really want to show here is a little bit more gameplay, because we are going to get into some more complex mechanics the more and more we play. I've talked a little bit about the story, I've talked about the aesthetics and how much I like the lighting, and the fact that, again, these textures, don't these look like they just kind of photographed real rocks and then kind of digitized them somehow? It looks really, really unique. Maybe we can't go to Dig Site B yet. And, you know, I really love the Metroidvania style aesthetic that we have going on here. This is a teleporter. In order to get to this teleporter, we have to get one orb first. Also, we have a kind of a map here. It does have a, like, it's a non-simply aesthetic Metroidvania style. It is a meaningful style. You'll be backtracking, or at least in my 2 hours or so, I've backtracked a lot, and that is another primary source there. I've backtracked a lot, and had to backtrack a lot in order to go to areas that were otherwise inaccessible for me. Alright, so how are we going to do this? We should probably send a clone up here, and, you know, positioning might be important here. We'll send a clone up here that'll disable this red light, and we should be able to do some nifty puzzle platforming here to get this orb. And by getting this orb, now we should be able to go to the teleporter. There is a kind of map you can use on the fly, by the way, so we can see, oh, we want to go here now. If you hover your mouse over it, you can see what's up. I'm not sure what this red thing is. That's probably us, maybe. That's a memory terminal, and this is a long-distance teleport machine. So I should, if I'm going to play this game, this save file afterwards, I should at least get that so I get more completion. But anyway, Let's move to this teleporter here, and this should teleport us back to the space station. So in a way, this was almost the tutorial stage, I guess, but it's never explicitly like, you know, you need to do this, watch me demonstrate it first. Let's activate this teleporter, and then we should be able to go back to our space station and get kind of the real feel for the story started. And again, it's a mysterious story, but I don't want to talk too much about the narrative because I'm out of my element there. Instead, we should talk more about the gameplay, which we should encounter as we move over here. Welcome to Space Station Theseus. And I want to get to one of those hub worlds. Again, this is the sentient mineral I'm talking about, but I'm not going to talk about that too much more. I want to encounter one of those sections that I both feel positively and negatively about. Positively, in the sense that the sections, by the way, that I meant were the sections where it's like, you know, there's a teleporter, but you can't get to it until you get more orbs. That's kind of a cop-out, I feel. I understand why it's done from, like, a development standpoint and a game design standpoint, but that's the only part of this so far that has kind of felt kind of cheap and obvious, if that makes sense. Is like, okay, so we're playing this game that I think is really forward-thinking in a lot of its practices, but then it still has these kind of gates that you have to get a certain amount of collectibles to get behind. That's the only part so far that has left a really bad taste in my mouth. Otherwise, I am fully confident in saying that I think the Swapper is one of the best puzzle platformers that I have played in a long, long time. So again, we'll just continue walking by this. You can always pause that video and look at it more if you want to. We will be manipulating standard puzzle platformer type items like a crate here, for example. Can I actually jump on that? I can indeed. I don't think I needed to, though. Oh, I did need to, because this is all bathed in blue light. I thought I could just use my clone to get up here. We will be using elevators occasionally. We will be using crates occasionally. And this is one of those sections. Okay, so this is kind of a very basic or early example, but you can see we need one more encryption orb in order to access this console. And there's like 3 doors surrounding us. Each one of these should have an orb associated with it, if I had to guess, because I cannot remember. Okay, so this is a good example of a puzzle here. I almost think these lights might be indicating where we need to send clones in order to beat the puzzle, but I didn't notice that on my first time through, actually. So, how are we going to do this? First things first, we cannot send clones into blue light. We can send them into red light, though. So what we might be able to do is actually... Remember, we can't swap through blue light. Or sorry, we can't swap through red light. We want to send a clone up here, probably. And then maybe we can swap to him. And then we probably want to send a clone up here, and then we could just have this dude kind of walk over, and then we should be able to swap to him. We just can't create clones there, right? Yeah, okay, so that's a really easy kind of example of the puzzle. So we got a monogon orb there. Eventually we get trigon orbs, and I think bigon or duogon orbs, and each one of these just is worth more value, basically. In any case, again, skipping over the story because I don't want to spoil anything. And I think it's very important to recognize as you're watching this video that it's important to actually get in the mood of the game, and watching this video is probably not going to do a great job of doing that for you. So it's going to be a much different experience playing versus watching. So you remember, I do know how these puzzles work. Let's just take a quick look at this from my puzzle box standpoint. There's our orb, but we can't get to it. We can create a clone up there, but we can't like shoot our swapper ray through the clone. I would love to have this man actually die now. Maybe I can get him to come over here. There we go. So I'll have all my clones. And we have a switch up here, which is probably going to disable this red light. So what we need to do, we'll just walk this crate over on top of the switch, and then we will shoot the clone up here, and then we'll just kind of walk him over there. Oh, I think I botched this a little bit, actually. He might fall. Maybe I could do this instead. So let's create a clone here, like just in front of me. I know this seems unusual. But we'll swap to him, grab the crate, and then walk backwards. And then that dude is trapped in there now. So now we can just push this on here. He'll be able to hit that switch, and now we can swap over to this. So you can see, hopefully you understood what was going on there. I didn't think it was too complicated. And the puzzles in the game are not that complicated, at least as far as I've played so far. That doesn't mean I haven't been stumped on some for, 5 or 10 minutes. But I've never been at the point where I just want to throw my controller down and never play the game again. Do we have anything in this room? I guess not, except for, again, more flavor text via these sentient rocks. So yeah, I guess there is a kind of a third form of substance powering the narrative here, which is those, again, the rocks speaking to us, but we're not going to go too much more into that mystery. Alright, so we've managed to turn off our quarantine here, which means we can come back down here without actually being killed. And this area is a pretty good example of kind of the typical area or, structure you're going to encounter as you play through the Swapper. As much as this does have this Metroidvania style that is meaningful and admittedly meaningful, it does kind of sometimes fall into those situations where it's like, okay, you're in a room, almost like Dr. Wily's castle. You've got to beat like all of the robot masters in order to progress before you can actually fight Dr. Wily himself. You've got to get all these orbs in this area before you can progress yourself. This is also a good example, by the way, of what I meant by the game having as much focus on conceptual difficulty as execution. This is a section that was very difficult to execute for the first time, but it teaches you, well, it teaches you that if you fall, you die, which is important. And it's almost got a limbo mechanic, or a limbo style, where your dude is much more fragile than you would traditionally expect, especially, you know, a lot of platformers just don't have fall damage at all. This game definitely does have fall damage. You've got to treat your dude as if he is like a real man, otherwise he's probably going to die. So we'll go to this memory terminal. As you can see, you know, we played for 15 minutes. These memory terminals are coming fast and furious here, so that's what leads me to believe that the game moves a little faster than you might initially expect. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go here, actually. Maybe there is no way I'm supposed to go. Maybe I'm just supposed to go whichever way I want to go. Oh, no, here we go. So again, we've got another section like this. I think it's important to point this out, because as much as I like the swapper, I wouldn't even necessarily say I disapprove of structuring the game like this, but I do feel like it takes away from the, not to sound pretentious, but it takes away from the elegance of the game, is maybe a good way to put it, or it takes away from the transcendence of the game. I was really... Can we activate this? No, we can just walk through here. I was really, really into this game. This is the only thing that pulls me out, is these, like, gated sections. I prefer the traditional, like, Metroidvania style, where you, like, get a new ability. I don't know if the swapper gun ever evolves past what we have right now. So it seems like instead of gating things behind, like, learning new abilities that allow you to jump higher or, you know, swap with more clones or something, they're gated behind actually solving puzzles, which is fine. It's probably a personal preference, if I had to guess. But for me, I prefer the Guacamelee or, you know, Metroid style. Not to say I don't like this game, because I like this game a great deal. That's just my one minor nitpicking with it. Sound design is really good as well. The kind of ambience you get sometimes. And, you know, we are getting kind of a feel now for the more difficult aspects of the game. So we have slow motion every time we use our swapper gun. So what we have to do here, I think, is basically just keep ourselves alive long enough in order to be able to fire a clone backwards through this to get the orb. So again, this is another good example of it being both like conceptually difficult. This one is probably one of the more conceptually easy puzzles in the game, but also execution difficult. And this is maybe not one of the more difficult puzzles to execute, but one of the more unique ones, or novel ones, at least the first time that you do it, which makes it interesting. So I think it's a really smart idea, almost like Mark of the Ninja-esque, to not make these kind of puzzles like crazy skill shots where you would have to be like frame perfect in like your execution. Instead, you know, when you use the right click to swap, it slows you down, and by slowing everything down, it makes it much easier to execute. Again, you know, Mark of the Ninja froze time so that you could do stuff like that, or do amazing stuff with your shurikens and other powers. I think this game functions in kind of a similar mechanic, and it works really well. Otherwise, it would probably be downright infuriating. I wonder if there's actually like a secret up here that I did not notice before, or if this is just like a different area. Who knows, man? I actually died there. I did not expect that. Let's go through this door and continue onwards. Now, we are approaching our 20-minute marker here. This is kind of a cool puzzle as well. Notice that we have this, well, you know, let's demonstrate it in a traditional way. Let's kill this dude. Notice that we have this, like, area here. You might think, you know, just put a clone through there and then you'll be able to swap in. Sadly, you can't. You notice, by the way, that, or maybe you can. You notice, like, as you get further away, you can kind of, like, narrow your beam. But you need both of the kind of edges of this beam to be visible in order to create a clone. Otherwise, he's going to spawn in with, like, without his head or something. I don't think we can actually shoot a clone through here as much as I might like. No. So what we actually have to do is fire a clone up here, and then we're going to have him fall, and then, again, we're going to abuse the slow-mo mode here, and we should be able to swap into him. There we go. And now we're falling again, but we can switch back up to this guy, and we're good to go. Now we just have to go back up. I think it works really well. The puzzles in this game are inventive. I mean, obviously there is, whether intentional or not, there's a certain portaliness that a lot of puzzle platformers, I wouldn't necessarily say suffer from, but represent, if you will, or, you know, contain. This game also feels a little like 2D portally, or again, to use the other possible hallmark there, a little gateways-y. But it also feels like totally unique in its own kind of style as well. So I don't know if I actually did I get 6 orbs? That hardly seems likely. maybe there is another area for me to go to. One more encryption orb is necessary. Okay, maybe we can go up to the greenhouse then instead. Like so. Alright, maybe we'll do 1 or 2 more puzzles and then I'll call it quits. Suffice it to say, I am a big fan of the Swapper so far. I think these guys at Facepalm Games have done a fantastic job with this. And, you know, as much as I love puzzle platformers, it takes a little bit for me to get excited about one these days, because I feel like I've almost seen everything. I'm excited about the Swapper. That's probably all that needs to be said there. So we should be able to fire a dude up here, have him hit the switch. I don't know how this is going to work, actually, because we can't swap through a red beam. Let me think about it. This might be one of the tougher ones, actually. So that disables that red beam. So I could, like, swap a dude back here and then maybe swap up. Okay, that actually turned out to not be all that difficult. But where does this blue light leave? Oh, we can swap through that. Okay, no big deal, I guess. All right, now we can access the next console, and we might as well. So again, in spite of the minor, very, very minor gripes that I have with the Swapper structure, I think this is absolutely a fantastic game, and any fans of puzzle platformers should definitely have this on their radar as they look for something to possibly pick up this week on Steam. It's been a very good week and a little bit for Steam games, no question about that. The Swapper is one of the best, one of the ones that I'm most excited for sure. I believe it's going to be $15 on Steam, might be $10 though, so make sure to peep the video description for a link to the store page to check it out. I'm going to stop my video right now. Suffice it to say, I am a big fan of what has been done here at Facepalm Games with the Swapper, and I think this is a very complete and fun game, not only on a mechanics and gameplay level, but one of the most ambitious puzzle platformers I've ever seen from a narrative standpoint as well, and I think it succeeds in that. You know, when you're ambitious, it's possible that you fall flat on your face. I don't think that happens here. I think the story is really well done, piques my curiosity, has me interested, and has me wanting to absolutely finish the game. So again, consider this 2 thumbs up for me. As always, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I hope you found it entertaining and maybe a little bit informative. And as always, I will see you next time.